see if we can get a good look through here. Where's my... No, I'm not going to be able to see that one either. Maybe if I increase the exposure. Is that my... Yeah, okay. So we can see what's going on here is that it's just frozen, right? If I push the button, nothing happens. The clock is stuck at 6:31. It's been stuck at 6:31 forever. None of the buttons work. It's just frozen solid. If I could find a way to reboot it, that would probably fix the issue. But I don't know how to do that. I talked to the guy upstairs. His brother is gone until Friday morning. And so there's no heat in here until then. I don't really have a choice. I have to crank the heat in the other room to compensate. I guess we're going to be having eggs for the next couple of days. And maybe we'll be making some extra coffee. These sorts of things to compensate for that. It's like I say, if I just know how to reboot it, it would be a relatively simple problem. But anyways, maybe I'll see if I can. See, the problem is I don't want to play with it because I know that it's a live electrical box underneath there, right? So that's not hooked to something that's stable. It is literally like a live wire, and it's a big wire too, right? So I don't think it's a good idea to play with it. What's the temperature? Well, it'll be okay today. It'll be okay tomorrow. Maybe a little cooler. It's going to be cold on Friday. So I guess when he comes in, well, like I said, we're going to be having eggs, I suppose, and other things that will throw off some heat in the short term. So it's becoming more clear what the narrative is setting itself up as. Trump is being set up as the villain. You need to vote away your rights to stop Trump. Sure, the TPT might reduce you to a slave, but you'll vote for it because Trump is scary. The security state is expanding, but you'll vote for it because Trump said something mean about gay people. All this war and imperialism and greed and corruption, you'll just vote in favor of it because of the frightening Trump. They're ramping this up, right? And I just don't have time for it. But if you were paying attention to what Clinton did as secretary, this should not be surprising. It's exactly the kinds of UN votes that she engineered. The same tactics, the same nonsense. And it's equally transparent, okay? In fact, this kind of narrative is what you're going to get for the next 8 years. It's all about distracting you with something scary to continue the slow enslavement of America, and you'll be happy in your slavery too, okay? So you're going to be constantly bombarded with this, scary thing. It's the same neocon philosophy that was underlying the whole Bush presidency. Okay, you need some scary thing to unite the people, a noble lie or whatever you want to call it, right? There's a philosopher called Leo Strauss that was alive a few decades ago, and that wrote a lot about this, and that very much underlies what we call neoconservatism. It's just Hobbesianism. This idea that you need to put all power into a state. The state is the role of the protector to protect people from the scary outside world. Okay, this is the world. This is what Clinton is bringing us. Okay, and you can see it. It's already starting. Okay, and the only way out of this is to disengage. Okay. You don't want to support Trump, obviously, and I've tried to be clear about that. But you really don't want to support Clinton either, okay? And the more she tries to scare you, the more clear it is that you don't want to support this, okay? So just disengage, just don't vote. And I need to reiterate it, okay? But you have to be able to see it for what it is first. You have to be able to recognize that you're being manipulated, okay? Trump is playing the role of the villain. Clinton is here to save us. You need to make that deal with the devil, that Hobbesian bargain, to sell yourself away for your own safety. So you're going to sell away your sovereignty. You're going to sell away your rights as workers. Okay? You're going to sell it all away. You're going to throw it all away. And she's going to convince you to throw it all away. So that she can protect you. And it's all theater. And you fall for it at your own peril. Okay? In your rush to stop fascism, quote unquote, you're going to elect a woman that all educated people realize is a fascist in waiting. Veni Vidi Vici, and hey, you can count on her to get the trains to run on time. You can, truly. We're a little over 30 years late, but there it is. It's right out of Orwell. You're going to hear this. I'm voting for Hillary Clinton to stop fascism. It's an absurd statement. Look at it. Read it over a few times. Okay? Let it sink into your mind. I'm voting for Hillary Clinton to stop fascism. Somebody's got to meme this. I'm sure someone will. Okay, but like I say, I'm tuning out. Okay, you might get the odd or right comment from me, the disinterested, sardonic observer, but I have no attachment to this. It's just, it's surreally ridiculous, and I'm not wasting my time trying to get in between both. Okay, it's if the choice is between Trump and Clinton, it's a choice between fascism and fascism, right? And the way that it's being designed is it's clear, okay, what she will allow. She will use this as an excuse to push through the most anti-libertarian legislation that you can imagine. Okay, and you can see this coming up, and it's what it is. Okay, so I don't see any use in standing at the top of the hill and screaming and yelling. If you can't see it, then you deserve it. Sorry. I mean, they set this up, right? They slash your education systems. This is why Sanders is so important, okay? He's probably the last chance that you have to get out. And if you can't see it, if you don't accept it, if you can't see that this is your last chance out of the dystopia, if even dystopia if you're a middle class white person, but something a lot worse than that if you're something else. If you can't see that this is your last chance, then you deserve your own fate. And those are the kinds of comments that you're going to get from me after this election cycle when I decide to take a few minutes to tune in. Hey, just a reminder, Hillary Clinton is actually not a pro-choice candidate. If we define choice as a woman's right to choose, that is not her position. Even when she agrees with access to abortion, it's not on a choice basis. It's through some other argument, like health, and etc. And in fact, she is on record many times over many years as stating that she will put restrictions on access to abortion, meaning that if you vote for Hillary Clinton, you are voting for for restrictions to access to abortion. You might not realize it, but you are. So you might want to tone down the identity politics just a little and take a closer look at what you're actually buying. You may be disappointed in what it actually is. Again, a vote for Hillary Clinton is a vote for restrictions on abortion, and she has stated herself that on many occasions. She said it at the debate the other day. And if you do the research, which beyond the right-wing talking points that you see on TV, you do some actual research and you look at what she actually thinks. It is not at all hidden. You're not, mucking through the dirt in any way. She's very open and transparent about the fact that she actively supports restrictions on abortion, and that when she does support abortion, it's not on a choice basis. It's on a health basis. Okay. And in fact, most of the reasons that you might think you want to vote for her out of fear will actually not hold up to any real scrutiny on your behalf if you bother to take the time to look into it. She's not particularly keen on the gay either, in fact. So you might think that, you want to vote for gay rights. She's not. Okay, she never has been particularly keen on the gay. She's pretty right-wing. Pretty family values. Kind of a little bit of a fundamentalist Christian, actually. Nor does she particularly like black people. And if you look into that, that's pretty clear. And I could read for a while. These values issues. But hey, if you don't know this yet, what's the point? If we're going to do this, are we going to reduce the election to this, identity politics nonsense, to this, this values war? You might be surprised to find out that Clinton is pretty conservative on most of these things, and that in fact Trump could very easily come out on her left on a number of these issues. If this is a values war election, like a culture war election, and you're on the left of the culture war, Hillary Clinton is just about the worst spokesperson that you could imagine, because she doesn't agree with any of it. She's on the right on issue after issue after issue. So you want to reduce it to this? This is what you're voting on? You might want to take a close look at what you're doing, because you might not get what you bought. And how about support for capital punishment too? Jeez. What a bleeding heart, huh? Trump wants to ban Muslims from entering the country. Hillary wants to carpet bomb them in their own countries, then brag about there not being any casualties. That's smart power. And you think Hillary is less racist somehow? Amazing. You should get some kind of award for that, for you to actually look at that information and conclude that Hillary is less of a racist. That's remarkable. Amazing. She also supports mass deportations of illegal immigrants, by the way. Are you sure this is your horse in the culture war? This is who you want to represent you? Your liberal side of this discussion. This is your representative. Are you sure about that? Sorry, the heater switch is key. He came in early, something to do with his kids or something, I don't know. I'm not really going to worry about it too much. I'm just happy that the situation is resolved, and I'm about to get something to eat. I'm sounding schizophrenic again, there's no doubt. It doesn't change the math. It's rigged. I'm disengaging. I'm zigzagging, sure. But is there a contradiction in there anywhere? Can you find me one? It doesn't change the delegate math. It does change the likelihood a little. I mean, if Hillary gets arrested tomorrow, things change, right? I'll base whatever I continue to rant out on existing polls. But projections of future successes need to be made on analyses of past ones. Like, yeah, Ohio was never really serious. But it's hard to see how he can get 60 to 65 in New York when he got 49 in Illinois. Yes, he always had to get 60 to 65 in New York. So what he needs to do hasn't changed. It's all the same path still. But that's a big gap in votes over states that ought to vote similarly. So it's not that what he has to do has changed. It's how likely it is that he'll get there that's changed. But I mean, you're talking about probabilities. So that's the nice thing about uncertainties, right? Is that when you're talking about these broad levels of distributions, it's not enough to say that there's a certain amount of probability that this or that will happen. You say that there's a certain amount of probability that it'll fall into this range of this happening. And when you do that, when I say that the probability the probability can come down substantially while still maintaining it's still in the same range, right? So, I mean, it's a little bit misleading to talk about probability in terms of like a linear scale. You want to talk about it more in terms of sets, right? So the difference between a 25% probability and a 35% probability is not that much. It's unlikely in both cases. If you do 100 experiments, the 35% will happen more often. If you're doing one, should you base your decision particularly differently based on whether you have a 25 or a 35%? I would say not. I would say that instead of looking at it on this linear scale, you want to put it into brackets. So, 0 to 20, and then, 21 to 40, and, 41 to 60, or whatever, right? And then you've got to, keep in mind that there's going to be stuff like if it's 19, you want to take a gamble of going up or staying where you are, right? But I mean, that's the better way to look at it, right? I haven't crunched any numbers or anything, but I can tell you that it's intuitively obvious that while the probability might have decreased mildly, the bracket hasn't changed, right? So it's not a big difference. But it's enough to question. Let me rephrase that. He may not have fallen a bracket, but he may have moved almost to the end of it, or he may be in the kind of gray area of those brackets, right? Intuitively. It's a small difference, right? If he had gotten 53% in Illinois, then I would be more confident that he could get to around 60. I was hoping he could get around 60. And like I say, some of the polling upheld that. I would be a lot more excited if he had that extra bit of boost to Illinois. And like I say, I remain skeptical that I remain skeptical about ballot stuffing. That 10% bump, or that 10% error, might just be the consequence of a head start for the Clinton camp. So there's articles floating around claiming the lead is too big or the math is fundamentally altered, that it's too late, that's it's inaccurate, okay? Nothing really meaningful changed last night. He still needs to do exactly what he always needed to do and what he already needed to do. It's just a question of whether it can be done or not that's become a little more in focus, and it's a little deflating. But despite my reactions, okay, the truth is that his chances of winning are not different today than they were yesterday. That's what I'm trying to get across here. And he still needs you to get out and vote in order for him to win. It's just that you have to do it. Will you actually do it? It's more that I'm kind of disappointed in the results, the lower turnout, and I think that the results that we're seeing are indicating that people might be less inclined to go out and actually vote. And so what I'm saying is that it's more that I've lost faith in you as a voter, as a citizen. So be it, right? But I got a new feature here. It's early in the morning on March 17th, 12:30. And I am going to start a new feature called Shit Hillary Said. Except I will never call it Shit Hillary Said except at that one point in time. It's things Hillary actually said. Okay, so every day I will post a uninspiring quote from Hillary Clinton on this Facebook page. Easy enough to find there. Things Hillary said. Alright. First thing she said here that's just outrageous. we realist Democrats understand that collateral damage is an unavoidable byproduct of the war on terror. And me being a mother, grandmother, and tireless children's rights activist does not mean that I will flinch even one iota in allowing Israel to obliterate every last school come rocket launching pad in Gaza. Those who allow their children to be used as human shields for terrorists deserve to see them buried under 1-ton bombs. So I'm going to get this out of the way. It's very preliminary. And all analyses are subject to adjustments as a consequence of polling. These are first impressions, really. So first off, let's look at Arizona. Well, let's look at the March 22nd states first, and the first one is Arizona. I'd suspect Arizona is the liberal flip side to Nevada. It's roughly similar, but leaning more in its favor due to more progressive bases. Tucson and Phoenix are both something like Austin. There isn't really a big base of right-leaning Democrats like there is in Texas, so you'd be looking at roughly purple state demographics with a slight boost for Bernie. Okay, Arizona is a melting pot of sorts, being torn in various directions. So you can win it, but again, you're looking at the factor being turnout. If it's low turnout, then it looks like Nevada, and if it's big turnout, then it looks like Colorado. So, that's a big space, but that's roughly what you're looking at, right? Idaho, you can't rig a caucus. I don't see any reason to think it would be different than the other Western caucus states. Utah is weird. No, it is. And it's weird due to the Mormon vote. Even non-Mormons are still living in what is a broadly Mormon society. The truth is that Utah is almost like a different country. There's a lot of reasons to think that Utah would react very badly to Hillary Clinton as a consequence of those cultural differences. But it's not clear that they'd react well to Bernie Sanders. Okay, they got over Obama being black in 2008. To me, that suggests that they can get over Sanders being a Jew in 2016. But Utah is also the kind of state that would have done its homework and actually known that Obama was to the right of Clinton. I think that Sanders being a bit more libertarian, even if he's less conservative, is probably important in Utah. Some holes would help regarding margins. But he should be aiming to make up at least 50 delegates on March 22nd. And he has to do that. He has to start making up delegates. Okay, and it's got to be at least 50 on the 22nd. That's what the math says. Okay. On March 26th, you've got Alaska and Hawaii. These are caucuses, but I don't have any reason to suggest that Sanders has a real advantage in Alaska. Clinton actually seems to do better outside of the lower 48. The politics might be a little distant, and the issue may already be the general. So I'm going to bristle a little on the assumption that he's going to be favored in those states. It's Alaska and Hawaii. I know they're caucuses, but I'm not willing to use the same logic. But there's Washington, okay? Washington is very, very liberal. It's practically Canada. Okay, he needs a big win here. 70% or more would be great. It's the kind of bump that could save him. And if he just squeezes out a tie, okay, if he doesn't win Washington by a substantial margin, it is a death blow. I think he should be the clear favorite here. But some polling would be nice. Assuming that Alaska and Hawaii roughly split, which is a conservative estimate, he needs to aim for at least a 40 delegate gain in Washington. So put together, he should be aiming to have made up 100 delegates by March the 26th, cutting the lead to about 215. which is what it was on March 14th. So he needs to make up what he lost by the 26th, which is a little slow. Okay, which is next Saturday. Okay, so by next Saturday, he's got to hope he made up what he lost on Tuesday. April 5th. Is Wisconsin more like Minnesota or more like Illinois? Well, let's split the difference. Let's say he aims for 55%. Again, if he's fighting her to a draw in Wisconsin, he's not pulling people out, or she's stuffing to a point that can't be, she's just overkilling it, right? So he should be aiming for more like 60, okay, but it's going to roughly split. He needs to win at least. Okay. On April 9th. Wyoming is another one of these caucuses that you can't rig, and all evidence does point in his favor, although I would again like some polls. The goal for after April 9th needs to be that the difference is under 200. Whatever the results in Wyoming are, that's what needs to be the takeaway for the situation to remain competitive. So, nobody really knows what's going to happen in Wyoming. He's going to roughly split in Wisconsin. Maybe he gets a couple. But if he walks in, and it's 215, by the time he gets past April 9th, it's got to be, under 200 or very close to it. Now we've got April 19th, New York. He has to be aiming for 50 delegates, like to make up 50 delegates in New York. Okay, that means his goal in New York is 60%. But he split Massachusetts. He split Illinois. The idea that he can do this is perhaps bordering on the realm of fantasy. Some polling would, of course, help, but there's really no evidence at all that suggests that he can get 60% in New York. Of course, if he does get 57% or something, then you can start tweaking, and if he gets 80% Washington or wins Hawaii huge, then he has some extra space. Okay, but his goal coming out of New York needs to be a delegate difference that is less than 150. And the percentage he should be aiming for to get him the boost at the end is really 60%. If he fights her to a draw, it's going to be the same lack of enthusiasm that kicked in last night. So he's got to win New York, and he's got to win New York by enough that he can get some excitement. Then we've got April 26th, okay? It's Connecticut and Rhode Island first. The question is whether Connecticut is more like Massachusetts or more like New York. I don't think it's much like Vermont or much like New Hampshire. But if he does win 60%, the reality is that this is less than 20 delegates that he makes up. Whether he gets 55 or 60 is really not important. He can even split them, really. He just can't lose them. Okay? So, if he wins a couple delegates in Connecticut and Rhode Island, great. There's not enough there to really worry about it. It's the reality. If you look at Delaware and Pennsylvania and Maryland is the other thing on April 26th, and that's the more important one. Okay, specifically and most importantly, Pennsylvania. My understanding is that these states almost always vote together, and that they're pretty comprehensively blue. I know that the conventional analysis will argue that Maryland should be favored for Clinton due to race, but I think the results up to this point have actually completely debunked this. I would expect Maryland to follow the same trends as the states to its direct north, because it always has before. The racial breakdown has never mattered previously and should not matter now. So the key is Pennsylvania. What does Pennsylvania do? Okay. Pennsylvania is the liberal mirror image to Ohio. Where Ohio is the northern tip of the southeast, Pennsylvania is the southern tip of the northeast. That means that you want to give Sanders a really strong chance in Pennsylvania, but that you also need to tone it down just a tad. So Clinton won Ohio with around 55%. I think it was 57. I think Sanders could win the Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware megastate with about 55%. Maryland may actually be a little kinder than Pennsylvania because it's a little more liberal. But when you work it out, If he wins those 3 states by 55% each, it's only about 40 delegates. So combined with Connecticut and Rhode Island, he wants to be walking out of April 26th with the difference very close to 100. So he walked in with around 150. If he can make up 40, 45 in Pennsylvania and Maryland, and 10 or 15 in Connecticut and Rhode Island, then made up around 50. So that's his goal. He's got to make up around 50 on the 26th. Now, I want to say that he wants to make it less than 100, but then the sky will fall if it's 110. Around 100 is good enough. Now, what you're not hearing is that the schedule actually shifts again in May. Okay, so it's good news for Sanders from now until about May 3rd. And then Clinton states click back in again. Clinton should be favored in Indiana. He has to hope for a split. If he can come in with a little under 100, he might walk out with a little over 100. It's very hard to see how he can win Indiana. Okay. And then there's May 10th. She should also be favored in West Virginia. Okay. Again, the analysis will say, well, West Virginia is white. Yeah. Well, thankfully it's only 37 delegates. But the truth is he'll be lucky to keep her under 60. The thing is, it's only a few delegates either way as long as he doesn't get wiped. I know that all of the models will say, well, West Virginia is so white, but I really frankly couldn't imagine much that could be less likely than a socialist Jew winning in West Virginia. Okay? Yeah, it's a white state. It's also a famously racist state. And when you have white states that are famously racist, very rural, they don't like socialists, okay? A socialist Jew walking into West Virginia, he'd better bring a gun to protect himself, okay? So I hope he brings some serious security with him. So we want to hope it's under 120 at this point after May 10th. He's going to get destroyed in West Virginia, okay? The models might suggest otherwise, but it's bad modeling. So then we've got May 17th, okay? May 17th is Kentucky and Oregon. She will likely get around 65% in Kentucky, and he will likely get around 65% in Oregon. Oregon's a little bigger, but it's basically a delegate split, so we're still looking at a difference of about 100 or 120 or so, hopefully. Okay. Now, I skipped Guam. It was sometime in May. Okay, it's 12 delegates. She'll probably win a few. But when you combine Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, you have 99 delegates. I'd have to think she's favored in all of these places. Unfortunately, that puts us back up to about 150 as the targeted delegate difference and gives her momentum going into June 7th. June 5th is Puerto Rico. She'll probably win by a good chunk. Okay? It's not because it's Latin speaking. It's because it's outside of the contiguous United States. I have not seen Bernie Sanders leave the contiguous United States. That's an interesting question. Has he ever been outside the contiguous United States? I mean, really. I think he's 74. I think that's actually an honest question. And then June 7th comes up, and he has to win over 100 delegates in California, and then hobble together the rest. As was stated, it was always about California. Is that likely? I think that California is big enough and liberal enough that depending on the circumstances going in, and depending on just how close to 100 the difference is, it's plausible. I'm not going to say it's likely, but it is plausible. He may get a little lucky. If he can go into California with it closer to 100, right? If he gets unlucky, and he's going into California with more like 200, that's going to be a problem. So you can see why the disappointing result in Illinois, specifically, even though it's only a few delegates, it does, like I say, it doesn't really modify the math, but if he comes out of June 7th and he loses by 5 delegates, then you know it's not going to make any sense to blame it on any one specific state, right? But the spring break might be something to bang your head against the wall about. Okay. Anyways, that's what I see coming up. I think he can meet most of these targets. It's when the schedule turns again at the beginning of May that things start to get a little bit scary. And at the end of it, he's got to win big in California. I think that like I say, with the right circumstances, I don't think that getting to 65% is impossible in California. Any higher than that, and we start getting into the realm of fantasy. But he's got to get close to 60% in New York before we get there. And that might be harder than winning California. So we'll see as this develops. I would love to see Bernie win on the last day by winning the District of Columbia by sweeping the black vote. That would make me feel good. These numbers have to align. The problem is that there's not a lot of black people in the votes that are in the states that are left, except Maryland. So it's if he can win Maryland. Let me put it this way, okay? If he wins all those other states and loses Maryland, it'll be quite strange. And you'll know that there's a real race problem in the Democratic Party. That this is split in ways that are quite unusual. I don't think that's going to happen. I've pointed this out in a few different places. I think that, in actual fact, if people were to audit the results, they'd find out that your Shaniquas and your Williberts aren't actually real people. That Clinton's supposed dominance in the black vote is the result of massive voter fraud. And if these people ever existed, they're all dead. But that's not something that will likely be ever proven. And likely something that most people aren't even thinking about. But I will say this. It is a historical fact at this point. Nobody questions this, but it is known that John F. Kennedy won the nomination by stuffing ballots. So, it's not unheard of in the Democratic Party primaries. It's a part of the history books that certain people might not want you to know. Yeah, that's right. You're a great liberal hero, even though JFK was a conservative, right? Your supposed great liberal hero. He won by cheating. Sorry, that's established historical fact. Um, so, and that's just one example of what I'm sure are many others. So, again, I'm pointing this out repeatedly. Um, I'm stating, that these results are suspicious, and it's an educated analysis and all these sorts of things. It's not direct evidence. It's implied evidence by somebody that understands numbers and saying, look, this doesn't make sense. Um, but you also have to put it in the context that as as much as Americans like to think that their democracy has some kind of sanctity to it, that it's immune from the taint of corruption, um, I think that we all know that that's a lot of nonsense. And that those of us that are a little bit more knowledgeable about the history know that it would not stand out in history if it turned out at the end of the day that my suspicions are grounded. It would be just another stolen result in a long line of stolen results. And when you put that in context, maybe what I'm saying comes down out of the clouds a little and hits the ground a bit.